I recently discovered that my wife has been cheating on me, but neither she nor Mike, my so-called best friend, has a clue that I know. Yeah, I get it. It sounds like a bad movie plot, but the truth is, these things happen all the time. I was at a complete loss about how to handle it. The part that really baffled me was why he would go after my wife. Do not get me wrong, Heather is a knockout. She is in her 30s, and even after having 2 kids, she looks amazing, especially in a bikini. But Mike's wife, Sarah, is just as stunning, maybe even more so. Sarah is tall, about 5 feet 7 inches, with long, flowing red hair that falls to the middle of her back, and her green eyes could pierce right through you. I found out that her measurements were 36-23-34, and I will admit, she had an effect on me. After finding out about Mike and Heather, I did nothing for a few weeks, just trying to figure out what to do next. I loved Heather, and I kept wondering if there was any way to salvage our marriage. It felt like a long shot, but I knew I would not be certain until we actually talked about it. I had planned to confront her on a Friday, but I had to push it to Monday. Why delay? Well, she got a call from a friend who was really sick and needed her help, so off she went. I was almost sure that if I called Mike and asked him to play golf on Saturday, Sarah would answer and tell me that Mike had gone out of town for the weekend. My parents had already taken the kids to their lake house, so I knew I would have the house to myself for the weekend. It felt like it might be the last peaceful weekend I would have in a while. On my way home, I stopped to grab a case of beer, deciding that by Sunday night, I would have emptied all 24 bottles. When I got home, I changed into shorts and a t-shirt, then headed to the kitchen. I kept dinner simple. I threw some hot dogs in a pot to boil, chopped an onion, and pulled a can of baked beans out of the pantry. I poured the beans into a pan, set them on the stove, and cracked open my second beer of the night. I was rummaging through the fridge, looking for mustard, when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and found Sarah standing there. She was in a tank top, no bra from what I could tell, and slippers on her feet. Her nipples pressed against the fabric, and I felt a surge of arousal. "Are you busy?" she asked. "Kinda," I replied. "Cooking dinner and drinking beer. Want to join?" "Sure," she said, and I stepped aside to let her in. We walked into the kitchen, and she took a seat at the table. Knowing she did not care much for beer, I opened a bottle of Merlot and poured her a glass. "Dinner's nothing fancy," I told her. "Hot dogs and baked beans. It is as basic as it gets." The hot dogs were done, and the beans were bubbling, so I turned off the stove, moved the pans, and grabbed 2 plates from the cupboard. I handed one to Sarah. She took 2 hot dogs and a scoop of beans, and we sat down to eat. "So, what brings you by?" I asked. "Do you know where Heather is?" "She went to help a sick friend," I answered. Sarah looked at me with a knowing smile. "And when exactly did that happen? Because last I checked, Josh seemed pretty healthy when he left the house." "Wait, you know about them?" I asked, surprised. "Of course. And by the way, they are not helping any sick friend. They are in room 130 at Arrowhead Lodge," she said. I did not know where they were, but yeah, I have known for a couple of weeks now that she is cheating on me. "How did you find out?" "I found a condom wrapper in Mike's pants while doing laundry," she said. "We are trying for a baby and do not use condoms, so that was a dead giveaway. I do not want to have his kid now, not with him running around with your wife. I used some money I got from my dad to hire a private investigator. Turns out, they have been meeting up for long lunches, and when he tells me he is working late, he is usually spending time with Heather." "How did you figure it out?" Carla asked. "Well, I was down in the basement working on a bookcase I am building. The phone rang, and I answered the one downstairs. Turns out, Heather picked up the phone upstairs just a split second before I did. The very first word I heard was her calling someone lover, and that was enough to make me stop and listen. Josh was on the other end, telling her they would have to skip their usual long lunch at the Marriott because he had an important meeting. I had to sit there, listening to her say how much she would miss him and that he had better make it up to her next time. "And you just stayed quiet?" Carla asked. "Yeah, I couldn't figure out what to do. But I've made up my mind to confront Heather when she gets home and see how things go from there." Carla gave me a knowing look. "I bet you will figure it out soon enough," she said. I stared at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Without saying a word, Carla stood up, walked over to me, and sat down on my lap. "I know how you look at me," she said softly. "You and I both know that if we weren't married, you'd have made a move on me a long time ago. But we are married. Well, we were, but not anymore. Not really. Josh and Heather broke that bond for us. We do not owe them anything now." She wrapped her arms around me, and her hand moved down between my legs, making it clear where this was going. I shifted in my seat, both surprised and aroused. Carla leaned in, her lips meeting mine. When she pulled away, she said, "I'm going to make sure my revenge is complete. Even though we were supposed to have a baby, I found ways to avoid getting pregnant. I even went and got a diaphragm, just in case. So, how far do you want to go with this payback on Josh?" "Why do you ask?" I replied, intrigued. "Well, I am at my most fertile right now, and my diaphragm is sitting in my purse. You know what that means." I stared at her, understanding exactly what she was implying. It would be the ultimate revenge, Josh raising a kid he thought was his own. I grinned and gently ran my hand along her body, realizing she was not wearing any underwear. She moaned softly and whispered, "Oh yes." Breaking the kiss, I told her, "I want you on Heather's side of the bed. That is where I want to do this." Carla stood up from my lap, gave me a mischievous smile, and said, "Come on, then." We quickly undressed and headed to the bedroom. When Carla stood there naked, I was blown away. She looked absolutely stunning, completely shaved, something I had only seen in magazines. I had always thought Heather was beautiful, but now I could not figure out why Josh would sleep with my wife when he had Carla. It just did not make sense. Carla must have been thinking the same thing because she looked me up and down, confused. "What are you thinking?" I asked. She sighed, "I do not get it. You are bigger and, well, better than Josh. Why would Heather go after my husband when she has you?" "It makes no sense," I said, shaking my head. "But none of that matters now. We are here, and they do not exist anymore." "You are absolutely right," Carla said, her eyes locking onto mine. "Take me to bed and take me." I pointed to Heather's side of the bed. Carla grinned and said, "You take me on Heather's side, and then we will head to my place, and I will take you on Josh's side. Deal?" "Deal," I replied. She laid down, demanding I take her hard, and I did not hold back. She moaned, and we moved together, like animals caught in the heat of the moment. Her pleas for me to never stop, to keep going forever, pushed me further. We both reached the height of our passion, and it was pure bliss. We lay there, sweating, catching our breath. I collapsed onto the bed next to her. Carla propped herself up on her elbow and looked at me. "I cannot believe it," she whispered. "Heather might be having her fun with Josh, but she is missing out on this. We have the rest of tonight, all of tomorrow, and part of Sunday," I said. "By the time we are done, you won't care if Josh comes home or not." After resting for a bit, we went for a second round, and it was just as intense as the first. Afterward, Carla turned to me and asked, "You are not going to send me home, are you?" I laughed and pulled her close. "You silly girl, of course not." We fell asleep in each other's arms. This morning, I woke up before Carla did, and as I looked at her, I could not help but feel that my affair with Josh's wife had dragged me down to the same level as Heather. Sure, I could justify it by saying Heather's betrayal had released me from my vows. If she could do it, why couldn't I? What is good for her should be good for me, right? But deep down, what really ate at me was the fact that I had broken my own marriage vows. I could no longer claim the moral high ground in my situation with Heather. Even though she had no idea I had cheated, I knew it. I did not realize Carla was awake until she spoke. "You look deep in thought. What is on your mind?" I was honest with her, and after listening, she responded, "I made the same vows to Josh when we got married. So I guess that makes me a liar, too. But I do not see it that way. Josh made the same promises to me, and then he was the one who broke them. If we were looking at this like a contract, which we learned about in my business law classes, Josh violated the terms of the contract, so it could be considered void. Now, I know marriages don't work exactly like that, but it doesn't change the fact that he broke his promise. To me, that means I'm no longer bound by it, and you shouldn't feel like you are either. You're not deceiving your wife. You're just responding to her betrayal." She gave me a mischievous grin and added, "Now enough of this serious talk. feed me, and then let us head back to my place and take care of the bed Josh used to sleep in. We have some work to do if I'm going to get pregnant. Carla started teasing me again, and soon enough, we were off to her place. If she wasn't pregnant by the time we collapsed into bed that night, it sure wasn't for lack of effort. The next morning, she asked when my kids would be home, and I told her they would be back around 6 p.m. She made us steak and eggs for breakfast, saying I would need all the energy I could get if I was going to keep up with her for the rest of the day. We spent the day together until about 4 p.m., when we had to part ways so I could get home before my parents returned with the kids. As I was leaving, Carla asked if I had made a decision yet, but I admitted I was still unsure. "Are you a good enough actor to pretend everything is normal?" she asked. "I don't know," I replied. "Why would that be necessary?" "Because," she explained, "the best revenge would be to keep doing what we did all weekend. I want to keep going until I get pregnant. Besides, you need to think about your kids. A divorce would pull you away from them. Courts around here always favor the mother in custody cases. Sure, you might get to see them every weekend, but that's only if Heather isn't so angry that she finds reasons to keep you from seeing them." She looked at me seriously and said, "My advice is to put up with this mess and keep things as normal as possible. Except for one thing. Every chance we get, we'll be together. We'll have wild, passionate sex like we did all weekend." "I don't know, Carla," I said. "Sooner or later, Heather and Josh will get caught. And when that happens, it'll hurt our position if we're found out, too." "We'll be smart about it," Carla insisted. "We caught them because they were careless. You found out about Heather because they were dumb enough to use the house phone to communicate. I discovered Josh's affair because he was sloppy enough to bring a condom wrapper home in his pocket. We won't make those mistakes. We'll get a couple of cheap prepaid phones from Walmart and use those to stay in touch. We will be careful, and our spouses will never find out. We will know when they meet up, and we'll plan our time together to match." I shook my head. "That won't work. What if Heather calls and says she has to work late? I'd have to stay home with the kids, and what if they meet up during lunch?" "We won't be able to either," Carla said, "because I rarely have time for a long lunch. You sometimes work late, do not you? When you do, she will have to stay home to watch the kids. I play cards with some of my old college friends every Wednesday night, and sometimes I go out for drinks with my coworkers afterward. Josh is used to it by now." She paused for a moment, thinking. "Another thing we could do is tap into their phone lines so we can hear what they're talking about. Are you on board with that?" I was impressed. "You really have thought of everything, haven't you?" "Well, maybe I missed something," she said with a shrug. "But if we work together, I think we can cover all the bases." I hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this?" "Completely sure," she replied without missing a beat. "I told you from the start, I want to get even with Josh. I gave that man everything, and he turned around and betrayed me. I spoiled him rotten, and this is how he repays me? No way am I letting him get away with it. My idea of perfect revenge is to let him raise another man's child. And what could be sweeter than that child's real father being the husband of the woman he's cheating with?" Her words hit me hard. "I want revenge too," I admitted. "But I do not know if I can keep up the act of being a loving husband to a wife who cheated on me." Carla leaned in with a sly smile. "You'll be more than stimulated by your mistress, I promise. Based on the last 48 hours, I think you enjoyed everything I gave you. You can have as much of that as you want, anytime, as often as you like. You know an offer like that is hard to refuse." She had a point, and I could not deny it. "It is definitely tempting," I said. "And that's not all," she added. "Josh wants 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and I plan to make sure they both have the same father." "What if the first child is a girl?" I asked. "Josh will definitely want a son. Then we'll keep trying until we get it right," Carla said. "At least until we get caught, that is. We just have to make sure we do not slip up." I nodded. "One last thing. Do you think you can act normal around Josh?" Carla laughed. "It's going to be tough not to smile, knowing I'm trying to give him a kid that's not his. But I think I can manage. In fact, I think I'll stay out with the girls after work on Tuesday." "What a coincidence," I said with a grin. "I'll be working late on Tuesday." Later that evening, my parents dropped off the kids at 6:30, mentioning they had not eaten yet. So, I took them to Mickey's, and as expected, They asked for Happy Meals. When we got back home, Heather greeted us with an irritated tone. Where were you? Why didn't you call me to see if I wanted to join you for dinner? You didn't tell me what time you were coming home, I shot back. You didn't call me on my cell or tell me you were back. She gave me a cold look before turning her attention to the kids. While Heather put them to bed, I decided to look into phone tapping. I researched how to tap a line using a voice recorder and figured I would buy 1 or 2 the next day after work. One for our house and one for Josh's, just to cover all the angles. I would have to call Carla to plan things out. That night, I noticed Heather didn't shower before bed. Maybe she had showered before coming home, or maybe she hadn't. When she climbed into bed, I faked having an upset stomach and told her we could maybe have sex the next day instead. On Monday, around 3:20 in the afternoon, my secretary buzzed in to let me know that Mrs. Carla Morris was there to see me. I told her to send Carla in. She walked into my office, closed the door, and without missing a beat, came over and kissed me. It's too bad your secretary is still here, she whispered. If she weren't, I'd lock this door, and you could have me right here on your desk. If you can wait 10 more minutes, she'll be gone by 3:30, I replied. Wow, Carla said with a grin. I was only joking, but I can definitely kill 10 minutes. She opened her purse, took out her cell phone, and handed it to me. I already saved my number in there, she said. Now, here's the plan for tomorrow. I'll head to the Marriott during lunch and rent a room. I picked the Marriott because to get to the rooms, you have to go inside the building and walk down a hallway. No outside entrances, so anyone could see us coming in. I'll call you with the room number once I have it. I finish work at 4:30, and I'll go straight to the room from there. When you get to the Marriott, swing by the bar and have a drink first, Carla suggested. If anyone sees you, they'll just think you're grabbing a quick drink on your way home. After that, come up to the room where I'll be waiting for you. Sounds like a great plan, I said. On my way home, I'll pick up the stuff we need to tap our phones. When's a good time for me to come by and set it up? No need, Carla replied. It's already done. I looked it up online and figured out how to do it myself. I've got a voice recorder ready to go. Just then, my secretary, Shelley, poked her head in the door. I'm heading out. See you tomorrow, she said. As soon as the door closed, Carla locked it behind her. What followed was quick, no-nonsense sex, and we both reached our climax fast. That should hold me over until tomorrow, Carla said with a grin. But you better come back ready for a long, energetic night. Maybe grab some vitamins on your way home. On my way back, I stopped by an electronics store and bought 2 tape recorders and a stack of extra tapes. I figured I'd keep one recorder at work to review the tapes and store anything incriminating from Heather and Josh for when the time came to explain things to a judge. When I got home, I was surprised to find that Heather had already made dinner and opened a bottle of wine. It was a sign she was in a good mood, which caught me off guard. She had just spent the weekend with her lover, and now she was acting like nothing had happened, like she was still the devoted wife. Was she some kind of nymphomaniac, or was she just enjoying the thrill of keeping me in the dark? Maybe one day I'll figure that out. Sex with Heather was always good, and she liked doing everything, which made me wonder. If Carla was telling the truth about me being better endowed than Josh, then what was it that Josh had that I supposedly lacked? It was another question I might never get an answer to. After dinner, once the kids were distracted by the TV, Heather turned to me and said, You know you have some making up to do tonight, right? And why is that? I asked, playing along. Because you missed out last night, she teased. I expect you to give it your all tonight. I forced a smile, replying, You're always amazing, my love. What I really wanted to say was, Then why are you sleeping with Josh? But I kept my mouth shut. While Heather read to the kids before bed, I snuck down to the basement and found the phone line. I hooked up the recorder, betting that she and Josh would be in contact the next morning while I was at work. I suspected their calls happened during the day, but I wanted to confirm it. She had her cell phone and could talk to him from work, but I was banking on the idea that they talked at home, too, like the time I overheard them by accident. That night, Heather and I had sex 3 times, something that rarely happened for us. We usually had sex 3 or 4 times a week, but it was unusual for us to go more than once in a night, though sometimes we managed twice. As we lay there after our 3rd round, something odd happened. Heather turned to me and said, Have you thought about the idea of us having another baby? Not really, I answered, caught off guard. My mind immediately wondered if this had something to do with Josh. I've actually been thinking about getting a vasectomy, I said, trying to sound casual. That way, you could stop taking the pill, and we'd still be in the clear. Why don't you want more kids? She asked, genuinely curious. I hesitated before answering. We had Mike and Anna so soon after we got married that we never had the chance to do anything. No trips, no adventures. Now that they're getting older, we still have time for that. Once they're independent, we'll be free to do the things we never got to do before. Plus, we need your income right now. If you got pregnant and had to leave work, it would put us in a financial bind. Truthfully, darker thoughts were running through my mind. I had a sneaking suspicion that Heather knew about Carla and Josh's plan to try for a baby, and that's why she was suddenly bringing up the idea of having another child. Was Heather trying to have Josh's first child before Carla could? Or was she simply trying to stake her claim on him? Did she have something against Carla? Or was this all just part of her affair? Either way, it made me question whether I could go through with Carla's plan. I started to feel like I might need to leave Heather soon, very soon. And then an even darker thought hit me. Were Mike and Anna even mine? I knew I had to find out. That night, I barely slept, tossing and turning with these thoughts racing through my head. The next day, after another intense session with Carla in room 2002 at the Marriott, I shared my concerns with her. I can't even wrap my head around what to do next, I told her. Carla looked thoughtful for a moment. I don't know what to tell you, she said. Should you confront her about Josh now, before she gets pregnant? Although, for all you know, she could already be pregnant and planning to pass the baby off as yours. I know what I'd do, she continued, but I'm not a man, and I'm not you. What would you do? I asked. I'd tell her straight up that I don't want any more kids. And until you get that vasectomy, I'd wear a condom, just to be safe. If she does get pregnant, then you can confront her and demand a DNA test to see if it's yours or Josh's. That should shake her up a bit. But if I get a vasectomy, I said, it'll ruin our plan for revenge. Don't worry, Carla replied. Just hold off on the vasectomy until I'm pregnant. I want all my kids to have the same father. Maybe we'll get lucky, and Heather was just testing the waters with you. You said you didn't want more kids, right? That might make her back off. We won't know for sure until she comes to you with news about a pregnancy. But until then, we still have a couple more chances to make me a mom, she added with a wink. On my way home, I picked up a box of condoms. That night, when Heather came on to me, I pulled out one of the condoms and started putting it on. What's this? She asked, sounding surprised. I've decided to use these until I get a vasectomy, I replied. I really don't want any more kids. Take it off, she said, annoyed. I hate how it feels. I'll stay on the pill and use spermicide until I can get used to using a diaphragm. That way, we'll be safe. As I finished putting on the condom, a troubling thought crossed my mind. Heather was a virgin when we got married. So when did she figure out she didn't like the feel of condoms? And who had she discovered that with? This only solidified my decision to look into the paternity of my kids. I suddenly remembered that it was because of a condom wrapper that Carla first realized Josh was cheating on her. If Josh used them with Heather, that explained a lot. But I still plan to get tested. If you don't have any spermicide yet, we'll just use these for now, I said, referring to the condoms I'd bought. I don't have any, Heather admitted, but I'll get some tomorrow, and I'll make an appointment with the doctor about the diaphragm. I don't want you to have a vasectomy, though. I want to leave that option open in case you change your mind about more kids. I didn't argue, though I was still set on my decision. I left the condom on, climbed into bed, and we had sex. After we finished, I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, Heather was already fast asleep. It was time to head down to the basement and check the tape recorder. I played back the tape and heard a few unimportant calls, but then there it was. Hello, good morning, honey. Do you miss me? Of course I miss you, came Heather's voice. Are we having lunch today? Yes, Josh replied, but we'll need to figure out something cheaper soon. These motel rooms are starting to drain my budget. If I keep pulling money out, my family's going to notice, and they'll know something's up. I'll try to think of something, Heather said. On Wednesday night, Josh trailed off into some obscene language about Carla, has her card night. Have you figured out how to get out of the house? Not yet, Heather answered, but I'm working on it. Good. I need more time with you than what we get on these quick lunch breaks. Me too, my love, Heather replied. We'll talk tomorrow? Definitely. Bye, baby. I felt sick to my stomach as the realization hit me. I had just been with Heather, knowing full well she had been with Josh earlier that day. It took everything in me not to vomit, but somehow, I managed to hold it together. I found it interesting that my unfaithful wife not only cheated on me but also paid for the room. And how would Carla react when she heard her husband refer to her in such a derogatory way? As I walked back up the basement steps, I knew one thing for certain. Heather wasn't leaving the house on Wednesday night. On Tuesday, when I got to work, I took my phone out of my desk drawer and called Carla. When she answered, I said, "Good morning. Listen to this," holding the recorder up to the phone and pressing play. After listening to the recording and hearing the insults directed at her, Carla replied coldly, "When the time comes, I'll kill that bastard." "Yeah," I said. "About Wednesday, what's your plan?" "I think I'll have to work late on Wednesday," she replied, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. "But I won't let him know until the last minute, so he won't have time to call a nanny." "And did you catch that Heather paid for the room?" "Doesn't surprise me. Josh has always been cheap." "If you're working late, then I'll skip my card night," Carla said. "We can meet instead. I'll call you tomorrow to finalize everything." At breakfast on Wednesday, Heather casually asked if I had any plans for the evening. "Nope, nothing," I replied, pretending to be clueless. "Why, what's up?" "The girls from work are talking about grabbing a couple of drinks and having a chat," she said. "I can't go if you don't stay home with the kids." "No problem," I said, kissing her before heading to work. That afternoon, I went to the Marriott and rented a room. Once at work, I called Carla. Then, at 4:40, just before Heather finished her shift, I called her. "Hey, I'm going to be stuck at work a little late. There's an issue with Henderson's contract that needs to be sorted before Ethan meets them tomorrow. Sorry for the late notice, but I really can't leave yet. Don't wait up for me. Love you, bye." By the time I got home that night, Heather was already asleep, which was a relief. After my time with Carla, I wasn't sure I'd have had the energy for anything more. For the next 5 weeks, Carla and I met about twice a week. We always knew exactly what Josh and Heather were up to. It was during this 5th week that Carla surprised me. "Congratulations, Dad," she said, a playful smile on her face. "How about celebrating with the mother of your child? How does Josh feel about all this?" I asked. "He doesn't know yet," she replied. "I needed to tell the baby's real father first. Now I can break the news to Josh." "You know," I said, "the one thing we haven't done is take a weekend trip together. I think we owe it to ourselves to celebrate the pregnancy, at least once." Carla's smile widened. "Funny you should mention that," she said. "Josh has to fly to San Diego to settle some of his father's estate this weekend. He's visiting relatives and then meeting with his lawyer on Monday. If you can figure out a way to get away, we can go somewhere without either of them being any the wiser." "I think I can handle that," I replied. I pulled out my phone and called my brother, who lived in Aiken. I asked him to call my house right after I left for work the next morning, telling Heather that I needed to come see him for a family matter over the weekend. I promised to explain everything to him later. He agreed, and we hung up. Turning back to Carla, I said, "Now we just need to decide where we want to go." The next morning, just as planned, Heather called me 5 minutes after I left the house. "You need to call Bill as soon as possible," she said. "He's got some kind of family emergency and needs to talk to you." "I'll call him," I replied, hanging up and waiting until I got to work before calling Bill. I told him to tell Heather that his son, Brian, needed a kidney transplant and I might be a match. I needed to check if I was compatible. "What's going on?" he asked. I explained the situation, and he was immediately on board. "You can count on me," he said. "Anytime you need help." I knew I could trust Bill. His wife had cheated on him, and he had kicked her out, raising their kids as a single father. He hated cheaters just as much as I did. When Martha died in a car accident, I called Carla and told her how everything had worked out. We agreed to go away for the weekend, and I booked a room at Arrowhead Lodge. Room 130, fitting, I thought. At 2 p.m., I called Heather and told her I was flying to Aiken. I'll go home and pack my things. My flight leaves at 8, and I need to be there at least half an hour early to check in. I don't want to sound selfish, Heather replied, but I hope your kidney doesn't match. I need you with all your parts so we can grow old together. Damn it, Heather, I said, half jokingly. You make it sound like you really love me. You better not have any doubts about that, Bob. Not a bit, I said, though inside, I thought, if only you knew. We said our goodbyes, and when I got home, Heather was waiting for me in what she called her me costume, completely naked except for her me pumps. Do you have time to charge me up before your trip? Since there was no real flight to catch, I said, I've got time. Afterward, as Heather lay on the bed and I dressed, she said, on the phone, it sounded like you doubted my love. Just kidding, baby. I know exactly how much you love me. Yeah, every time you cheat on me with Josh, I thought bitterly. I never want you to doubt that, she added softly. Never, I replied, keeping my thoughts to myself. The weekend with Carla was intense. We made love and went to bed. The next morning, we woke up, made love again, and then went to breakfast. Afterward, we returned to the room and made love until lunch. We ate, went back to the room for more, then lounged by the pool before heading back for, you guessed it, more lovemaking. Dinner, drinks, dancing, and then we made love again. We repeated the cycle the next day and even Monday morning before heading home, promising each other we'd do it again soon. When I got home, Heather was at work, so I went down to the basement to check the tape recorder. First, Bill called on Friday morning, just a few minutes after Heather hung up. Then, Josh called her. Have you figured out how to free yourself for the weekend? He asked. I'd love to spend a couple of uninterrupted days with you. No, Josh, I couldn't come up with anything, Heather said, her voice serious. And the truth is, I don't want to. What's going on? Why? I feel guilty for what I'm doing, Heather confessed. I love Bob, and he deserves better than a cheating wife. I was going to tell you. It's over. I need to focus on Bob. Come on, Heather, Josh protested. You've been sleeping with me for almost a year. How can you do this if you love him as much as you say? First of all, let's get something straight. I've never made love to you, Heather replied coldly. I had sex with you, but I've only ever made love to Bob. Bull asterisk 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 asterisk. Josh spat. That's bull asterisk 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 asterisk, Heather. No, Josh, it's not, she insisted. I love Bob, and I try to show him that every chance I get. If you love him so much, why are you sleeping with me? For the thrill of it, Heather admitted. The excitement of doing something forbidden. It was a huge thrill for me to go home and make love to Bob after asterisk 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 ed you. It gave me such a release. So, what you get turned on from giving him a few wet seconds after sleeping with me? If that's the case, why stop? I never gave him wet seconds, she shot back. I was always clean when I made love to him. Clean? Josh scoffed. You've never even showered before leaving the motel? I keep a travel bag at work with everything I need for a shower, Heather explained. Bob never had any clue. He's never smelled even the faintest trace of you. No, Josh, she continued firmly. I'm ending this before we get caught. I love Bob and I don't want to lose him. Come on, Heather, Josh pressed. I only got you drunk the first time. Maybe, she conceded. But I wasn't drunk all the other times, was I? I was drunk with the excitement of going home to Bob after being with you. I wanted to see if there was any thrill or excitement in doing it sober, so I let it happen a second time. That was the only reason I kept going with it. We managed to keep it up for a little over a year, but then it hit me. The way I feel about Bob after being with you is just not worth the risk of getting caught and losing him. Have fun in California, Josh, and when you get back, do not bother calling me. Goodbye. That conversation caught my attention. I swapped out the tape and put in a new one. After unpacking my stuff, I got to work. Around 11 o'clock, I gave Carla a call. As soon as she picked up, she said, I miss you. Is everything all right? You are looking good. Yes, I replied, but I want you to listen to something. If this is the Friday phone conversation, I have already heard it, she said. What do you think? It sounds like she is starting to use her brain, realizing she could actually lose you, she replied. What are you planning to do? She asked. I have already made up my mind. I will stay with her until the kids are 18. I do not see anything that would change that. If she really meant what she said to Josh, it might be easier for her to hold it together. But even if she breaks things off with him and they never meet again, how can you be sure she won't start chasing that excitement of cheating again down the road and hook up with someone else? Carla asked. You could always try this angle, she added. Tell her if she is really done with Josh, maybe the two of you can move forward, but she will not get a second chance. No, I cannot do that, I said. It would tip her off that I have been recording her calls. And honestly, the trust is just gone. I need a way to keep tabs on her without her knowing. Besides, she knows me well enough to guess that if I knew about it, I would tell you. She could use that to mess with Josh's head, and we definitely do not want that. So, what are you saying? She asked. We just keep doing what we are doing? You heard that call. They got away with it for a little over a year. We only made it a couple of months. They owe us another 10 or 12 months. Plus there are penalties and interest on top of that, which could make it even longer, I explained. I like the sound of that, Carla said. Carla and I kept seeing each other about twice a week until she hit her 7th month of pregnancy. She wanted to keep going, but her belly had gotten so big that making love started to hurt her. We both agreed we needed to take care of the babies. An ultrasound had shown Carla was carrying twins, and sure enough, she gave birth to 2 beautiful baby girls, just like she had predicted. Josh had always wanted a son. So 2 years after the twins were born, Carla got pregnant again. This time, the ultrasound revealed it was a boy. We kept up our relationship until she reached her 8th month of pregnancy, and then we decided to call it quits. We felt like we had pushed our luck far enough, and if we got caught, Carla would end up a single mother with 3 kids. Neither of us wanted that. As Carla put it during our last time together, the plan was always to get back at the cheater by making him raise another man's children. To do that, I need to stay married to him. Josh eventually got promoted and had to move for his job. I have not seen or spoken to Carla since then, but I still think about her often and fondly. It has been 6 years now, and as far as I know, based on the phone taps, Heather has not been talking to anyone else. Then again, she and Josh were fooling around for over a year before I caught on, so who knows? She could have smartened up and stopped using the house phone for those kinds of conversations. I have been watching her closely, though, and there has not been any sign that she is up to something. In fact, she has been going out of her way to spoil me lately. I am seriously rethinking my plan to leave her when the kids turn 18. Mike still has 4 more years, and Anna has 5. What do you think about this story? Write in comments. If you don't follow our channel Cheating Room, you will probably never hear from us again. If you are subscribed, congratulations, you will not miss any exciting story. Thank you for listening to this shocking story with us. See you again.